Hello and welcome. Please do not operate heavy machinery while listening to this guided meditation. This practice is brought to you by Copper Beech Institute, a nonprofit dedicated to teaching mindfulness practice and contemplative wisdom to inspire purposeful living, awaken our full potential for compassionate action, and encourage a healing shift in how we relate to one another and our interconnected world. Thank you for joining us, and learn more at copperbeechinstitute.org.
So just starting off by allowing yourself to find the most comfortable and supportive position that you can be in this moment. Whether that be seated, laying, standing, walking, and take a little while to make adjustments, supporting the lower back if you're sitting, putting the feet on a pillow if the earth doesn't meet the feet in a way that feels really balanced or supported. Giving yourself permission to just take the time to set yourself up in such a way that feels like you're really honoring the moment. If you wear glasses, removing your glasses. Just silencing any devices around you if possible, just so you can give yourself permission to take this time. Making any movements that feel like a balm for the body. So that might mean just kind of rolling the shoulders back and down a couple of times, or rolling out the neck a few times. Maybe it's opening and closing the mouth really wide just to soften the jaw. Maybe undulating the spine. And these movements can be really subtle, but they also can be large. You can stand up and move for a little while before sitting down if that feels, again, supportive, resonant. Every time we meet ourselves, there could be something different. So really honoring that something that may have been supportive yesterday might not feel as supportive today. And just starting to notice the body in as open of a fashion as you're willing to. And what I mean by that is that so often we can come into relationship with ourselves with that kind of calculating and critiquing eye. Oh, that's uncomfortable. I don't like that. Oh, that's tight. I wish that were different. And instead seeing what that would feel like and look like to meet the body, care for the body. How can you settle into yourself, move in any way that the body needs to move so that then you can land here? And notice when you want to get up and move around. Notice when it feels really difficult to land anywhere. What would it look like to give yourself permission for the next little while to remain with yourself? One of the ways we can distract from being with ourselves is by being in constant motion. In this constant space of doing, chasing this sense of finishedness or being done, which perhaps doesn't even really exist ever in this life, because the river of life constantly flows. But the choice that we can make in any given moment for a second or a minute or an hour is to slow ourselves down enough to notice ourselves in the flow of life, rather than constantly trying to rush ahead to the next thing or the next thing. If it feels good, maybe just coming into an awareness of the breath, and see if there's a willingness and capacity within your own body to slow it down slightly. Notice if this becomes a practice of force or this kind of need for control. And here, even though we're inviting a shifting of the breath to slow it down slightly, there's a way in which the invitation doesn't need to be forced or violent. Just asking the body, the breath, the mind, the heart, if they might be willing for a little while to slow down. Sometimes I picture that like I'm walking really quickly, and in any moment I can offer the choice of just slowing the pace. And things change dramatically the moment I slow the pace. The awareness can shift into another realm where the body perhaps and its mechanics become more available to us. There can be a greater awareness of other things that are available to our senses. What sounds are here? Can you smell anything? What is the body in contact with? And not just our hands, which are that space that are constantly touching, but other parts of our body. Those points of contact with the chair or the ground or other parts of the body. And as you perhaps begin to notice yourself in a different way and your immediate environment in a different way, see what's available to you that feels most present. For some of us, the things that are most present are actually the things that we wish most vociferously weren't there. Like fear or anger, anxiety, or deep sadness. But out of this place of this willingness to slow down, see if we might invite a willingness to be with fear. And if it's helpful to you, perhaps in this moment, saying either out loud or silently aloud within yourself, "Hello, fear, I see you." Just acknowledging its presence. See what happens when you just acknowledge that it's there. "Hello, fear, I see you." And almost as if you're sitting across the table from someone. Perhaps it's someone you think you know really well, so you assume how they'll make you feel. Or perhaps it's someone you've been avoiding for your whole life or for a long time. What might it feel like to sense that you've invited them to sit down at the table with you. What does fear look like? Does it take a certain kind of form? And how does it feel to just be sitting across the table from it? And rather than doing anything with it, because sometimes if the mind doesn't like something, it will immediately go into problem solving, ways to be rid of it or to change it, to shroud it, to suffocate it in some way. But here, right now, just for a couple of minutes, let's just sit across the table from fear. And anytime you notice the mind, the body, the heart, somehow trying to get up and run away or to pretend that fear isn't there, come back into that simple space of acknowledgement. Hello, fear. I see you. And we'll just stay together like this for one more minute. Continuing to sit at the proverbial table, gazing with as much open-heartedness as is available to you as you come into that closer space with fear. Hello, fear. I see you. Staying at the table with fear as long as the energy and resource within you allows for. And then whenever you feel ready, just allow the breath to deepen if that feels supportive. Just noticing what it felt like to invite fear to sit at the table with you. And maybe acknowledging anything that you learned or that arrived to you in that experience. And just really, really slowly, maybe again coming back into the body, rolling out the shoulders, the neck. If the eyes have been closed, let the eyes just slowly, whenever you feel ready, start to brighten and open. And whenever it's time, just allow yourself to transition into whatever space you've decided comes next. And as much as possible, just moving really, really slowly. Noticing the body, allowing it to settle as much as is available in this moment. Feeling your feet on the floor, or if you're laying down, feeling the body on the floor. If you're sitting, noticing the back against the chair, the legs. If you're standing, noticing the contact of the feet on the earth. Noticing yourself with as much room as you're willing to give the body. Just feeling what's here to be felt. Is there warmth or coolness? Is there agitation? Is there calm? Can you invite a softening in the belly, in the face, the shoulders, the hands, the jaw? This kind of heaviness that we can invite in when we offer ourselves that space to slow down for a little while. And can we feel into our relationship with ourselves in this moment and see what it might look like to cloak ourselves in deep friendship? That we're allowed to care about ourselves, to hold space for all of our perceived mistakes, for all of our past and our unknown future. Can we make room for all of it? Can we kind of sigh and rest into ourselves as we are, not as we think we should be, as we imagine ourselves to be once we're that idealized version of ourselves, but instead just really meeting this person who's here right now. This person who has been so deeply influenced and informed by the life that we have led up until this moment. And at the same time, recognizing that in any moment we can begin again. Not that we aren't still deeply influenced by all that which has come before, but that we also are allowed to make a different choice. And sometimes those choices are really small. And sometimes they're really large. Sometimes they're really obvious to us. And sometimes they're so shrouded in all of our conditioning, our trauma, our ways of being. And so we invite the choices in a little bit closer. We invite in the opportunity to do something different. And not like we won't go back to the old ways, the habits that might be so deeply entrenched within the mind or body or heart. But when we start to see the choices, as small as they might be, something can open. Just a crack in what felt like something that was so solid, unchanging, unmoving. We can all of a sudden see that hairline fracture that can come from even entertaining the idea that we are allowed to do it differently. And maybe that difference is just that you're slowing down long enough to listen to this meditation. That for the next few minutes, you will invite the permission for yourself to not really do all that much. That you'll let yourself listen to this until the end. And maybe as soon as it's over, you get up rushing again to the next thing. But maybe, just maybe, even after the meditation is complete, you stay with yourself quietly for a little bit longer. You allow yourself to luxuriate in being rather than doing. And maybe you don't. but letting that gentle cracking of what felt so solid in our known ways of being start to form, and see what it could open into. So here, offering as much softness into the body, noticing perhaps all the ways we harden off in tension or in tightness, in anxiety or in fear. And invite a softening. And maybe that's through the breath, or maybe that's through some kind of image you can call to mind that allows you to perceive of this concept of softening. What if you had to call up into the mind's eye, what does softening look like? Is it the melting of ice? Or is it the suppleness of a ball of bread dough? Just calling up an image if that's helpful to you. Just let yourself be held by whatever is beneath your body. The floor, the chair, a bed, the earth. Can you welcome a kind of sense of yielding, that you're allowed to be held by that which is beneath you, rather than this sense that we have to be constantly holding ourselves up. From this place of as much softness, as much this kind of yielding spaciousness as is available to you in this moment, I'd like you to just sense as though you're sitting down across the table from that which we call our fear. Fear is such a big word. It's one of those containers into which we can place so many things. And really making this choice to sit down across the table from fear. And just sitting for a few moments, coming into that acknowledging place. Hello, fear, I see you. And you can just stay here if that already feels like a lot or enough. Just stay in that acknowledging place. But if you feel like there's energy and there's curiosity here, from this place of sitting at the table, gazing at fear in whatever form it might take in your mind's eye, see if you might be willing to ask fear, what are you afraid of? And the mind might want to jump in immediately and tell you what it's always told you about what you're afraid of. But see if here, again, in that kind of yielding place, that soft place, you can just listen for whatever arrives. What are you afraid of? And just let a quietness perhaps envelop you here. A patience that comes when we really make the choice to listen rather than to drive an answer. As often as you need to, come back into just sitting with yourself at the table. And then as you're ready, lift the gaze again towards the fear. Look at it, acknowledge it. Hello, fear, I see you. If energy and resource are present, if true curiosity can be here with you, and only you can know if it's here, keep asking gently, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? And keep just gently inquiring and notice that tendency again to force a response rather than just sitting as the moment arrives and see if something shows up. There can be so many layers to these big spaces like fear. So here we make that choice to perhaps again invite that small fracture in the story we may have told ourselves for a long time about fear, and even about what we might be afraid of. And not that those stories aren't true too, but one of the gifts of deep listening is that things can arrive that are quieter, that are more subtle, that perhaps were being shrouded or drowned out by louder, more insistent thoughts, stories, voices. Hello, fear. I see you. Acknowledging that we're only ever meeting anything in that moment. And we're constantly changing and shifting. So see if we can acknowledge that too. What are you afraid of? And letting fear answer you if you're willing to listen. If it feels nourishing and resonant to you, anytime fear answers, offers up something that is there to be afraid of, rather than perhaps being dismissive or, again, going into those really common places of problem solving or fixing. Instead, perhaps just responding to these answers with, I'm here. I'm here. And it's okay. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay for fear to exist. We acknowledge and we inquire. And then from this point, we see, what do I want to do with that? And so often there's nothing that needs to be done. Acknowledgement, just presence can be enough. And sometimes something is required of us. But out of this quieter place, our choices can become more clear. And perhaps we can recognize too that acknowledgement can be just as nourishing as action. And honoring when nothing is called for. And then honoring when something is called for. So sitting here as long as feels available to you, with fear at the table, peeling up as many layers of this inquiry as feels nourishing in this moment. And at any time if you need, excuse yourself from the proverbial table. No problem. And then just gently let the inquiry, even the acknowledgement, just let it be for right now. And if willingness is there, with fear still sitting with you at the table, see if for 1 minute you can just breathe with or just be in the presence of fear. Sharing space with this thing that we call fear. Just quietly. Nothing needs to be done. No more inquiries need to be made. Just sitting here with yourself and with this part of yourself for 1 more minute. And if it feels nourishing or resonant to you, maybe bringing a hand to your heart or your face, just some kind of gentle, tender connection with yourself. And that might just, even if your hands are touching, just feeling your hands touching each other. And perhaps just to yourself, to your whole experience in this moment, acknowledging and honoring all that's here. And again, if it's helpful to you, just saying, I'm here. In this moment, I'm here. And staying in this place of friendship with yourself as long as you'd like. And whenever you feel ready, just starting to gently mobilize the body. And then maybe letting the eyes start to brighten open whenever the time comes, whenever the time feels ripe and you feel ready to transition into whatever might come next. Take your time. Take good care.